Mark, welcome to Unmasked, the CEO Files. I've been looking forward to this conversation because you bring a unique aspect to this world of business. You've been an operator, you've bought businesses, you've sold businesses, you've advised owners and deal makers, and through Pursuant, you now sit beside founders and CEOs to help them at the most consequential time of their lives. A lot of people think M&A is about valuation, deal structure, due diligence, and timing, and of course it is.
Hmm.
But there's another part underneath that you've experienced, and as an operator, you know this. It's the readiness of the owner, the identity attached to the business, the pressure in the room, and of course, the signal that CEO sends when the stakes are high. You know that you've seen lots of challenges around that. The name of our podcast is Unmasked, the CEO Files, and I'm really excited about this conversation. So, welcome to the podcast, Mark.
Thanks, Alan. I'm excited to chat as well.
Awesome. So, in typical YPO fashion, because we say unmasked, I want to ask you that first question. If you were to know me, you need to know this.
Um, well, there's not a lot of people that know me super well because I tend to be a little more guarded than others. But those that do know me well, especially, forum mates, close friends, close family, uh, it would be that, probably to a fault, um, my discipline and responsiveness. It's interesting. Um, my family members, always comment on how I'm on my phone a lot, and and I say, well, that's because I have a reputation for being responsive. And if you notice, whenever you reach out to me, guess what?
Forgive
I
me.
respond immediately.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's one thing is just responsiveness to a fault. And discipline. Everything I do revolves around thinking about process, thinking about consequences, trying to be a few steps ahead. Um, when I'll go back to some YPO events and forum meetings and things like that. Hey, Mark, why don't you stay out late with us? And I'm like, guys, you don't understand.
I got to
I
work.
have a regimen of training in the morning. I have a regimen of feeling like I'm ready for the day. And I know if I'm out with you guys tonight, then that's not going to happen. And you're not going to get the best of me tomorrow if that happens. So I've got to be disciplined and I'll have one cocktail and bow out early, but it's not going to go much past that.
So you're a party pooper, is what you're saying. You're a party pooper.
Absolutely. Yes. I was the designated driver when I was the kid because I knew I was going to feel horrible the next day. And I just chose to be the responsible one in the evenings and make sure everybody else got home safely and felt terrible the next day.
That's awesome. I didn't want to go down this road, but I think it's really brilliant because I think every leader struggles with the two things that you said are really good about you. And the first thing I want to understand is how did you get to a place where responsiveness mattered to you? Like, was that ingrained in you or you had to learn it? Like, where did that come from?
Um, it may have been rooted in, I've always had a high sense of urgency to get things done. And that's kind of a package deal. If you want things to get done quickly and efficiently, then, your role in that is, being responsive,
Yeah,
when the opportunities arise, when there's inquiries. I would say that's part of it. I'd say the other part of it is one of my personal values is a service value,
got it.
which is what a big part of what drives what I do professionally.
Yeah.
So I get fulfillment off of having somebody say, hey, thanks for getting back to me quickly. Thanks for the responsiveness. I love it when people say, do you have any other clients? Because you always seem to have time for me.
Good.
And, if only they knew,
Yeah.
behind the scenes that, there's a price to pay
Yeah.
to being responsive, but it goes hand in hand with a service value.
I love it. You and I share that, and the people in my life kind of give me shit about it a lot because you give up other stuff when you're
Yeah.
responsiveness. But like you, it's a life of service. I believe that's very strongly. I'd like to dive in before we get into the M&A stuff. The word discipline. You told us a story around how you connect that to your workouts and how You that is part of your body is your temple. But it does it permeate in every other part of your life, that discipline? Tell me about where that came from and how you maintain the discipline to be disciplined, because it's not easy.
Yeah. I'll give you I guess my one of my moments of awakening as it relates to following through and being disciplined and basically doing what you're saying you're going to do. I'll go back about 20 years now. Uh, I was living a very active life. I still live a very active life, but I was a very active life doing a lot of different things. And I found that I was falling into the practice of kind of overcommitting to myself, saying,
Hmm.
"Hey, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to spend this much time doing this and this much time doing that." And one day I just kind of woke up and say, you know what, time out. Is there actually enough hours in the day, the week, the month, and the year to do all this? So I sat down with an Excel spreadsheet. I wrote down everything I said I wanted to do and how long it was going to take to do that. Now that included how many hours a day am I going to work? How many hours a day am I going to exercise? How much time am I going to spend with my kids, my wife? How many times I'm going to go to a YPO event? How much time it takes to pick up the dog poop? How
Yeah.
much time it takes me to drive to the office. I mean, I did everything. And it turned out I needed about a 35-hour day
Yeah.
in order to do everything, golf, motorcycle riding, everything. And ultimately, I went through and I started crossing things off because I said, I'm overcommitted. And I started quantifying what a typical day would need to look like, for me to hit my objectives, what a typical week would look like, a month and a year, because some things you only do like once a year. Hey, I want to
Hmm.
take 4 trips with the
Hmm.
kids,
Hmm.
and the family a year. All right. So how much time is that going to take and what's it going to rob from? So it started for me with analyzing my commitments. And then it went into saying, okay, now that I understand what I can get done and how much time it's going to take,
Yeah.
actually getting ahead and scheduling things in my calendar. So when I knew hey, I'm going to do date night once a week, put it in the calendar. I'm going to golf once a week and I'm going to go to the driving range 3 times a week. Put it in the calendar. Actually, golf was one of those things I eliminated because it was robbing from everything else I wanted to do because
Right.
anybody that's a golfer knows it's a very time consuming sport.
Yes.
So, yeah, that's, I guess, just one example of how discipline manifests itself in my life is I'm just mindful of not overcommitting,
Yeah.
doing what I say I'm going to do and setting up a process to make sure that it happens.
So it seems to me that it's tied back to your responsibility of responsiveness, because if you overcommit, you can't be in life of service to everybody that
Yeah.
reaches out to you. So really interesting connection. And I think
Yeah.
we get
I
into
mean,
that
one of
right.
one of the moments, a proud moment as a father was, when my kids said, you are super busy, but we never feel you're too busy for
For us.
us.
Yeah, I love that.
And, that's because I scheduled them.
Yeah.
And, there's too many fathers that look back and say, geez, if only I would have worked less, I would have had more time with the kids, and now they're gone. And I didn't want to be one of those dads.
Smart. Before we dive into specifics of M&A, can you give me a 30-second on what Pursuant's all about? Tell me about the business.
So, started Pursuant
Pursuant. I
16.
apologize.
Yeah,
Pursuant.
that's okay. Um, Started Pursuant 16 years ago. We're an advisory firm that does a few different things. Number one, we do M&A advisory, both on the sell side and the buy side. Sell side, we run traditional competitive processes to help business owners exit and maximize their enterprise value on that exit. We also, on our buy side, essentially serve as a corporate development department for middle market companies that are looking to do M&A, but just don't have the time or the bandwidth or the competencies to do it on their own. Those deals are generally $10 million to $300 million a year. So lower middle market, work on kind of 20, 30 transactions a year. Um, our transaction services group does financial due diligence, post-transaction finance and accounting integration. So a lot of financial support and due diligence around deals.
Hmm.
That practice also provides interim and fractional CFOs. And then our third practice is more of a broad-based consulting practice that works closely with privately held companies and business owners to help them prepare for an ultimate exit. So, how do we get enterprise value from where it's at now to where we want it to be? And how do I, as a business owner, um, move into my next chapter gracefully
Love it.
rather than turning out to be a basket case because I've lost my identity and my purpose?
Yeah, that's such a big, I've just seen that in our YPO world. Too many times people got a $20 million check, they expect to be happy, and that's not what does it, right?
No.
Unfortunately. We're going to get into that, so I'd love to. But let's get started really at the beginning. You've started businesses, you've built businesses, you've operated and sold business, but what did being an operator teach you about your advisory role that just being an advisor could never?
Yeah. So I guess let's rewind back to when I was 18. When I was 18, I opened a gym right out of high school. And then I went on to acquire other fitness centers
Got it.
after that. I sold all the fitness centers in my early to mid 20s. And um, I thought I had a great exit, and I had a terrible exit. Looking back, I was not focused on enterprise value. I thought the money would last a lot longer than it did, but the good news is that I was 23, 24 years old, and I could chalk that up as a practice round. I then went into the facility services space, started acquiring companies there, built that into a national platform, did a partial exit in '02, the complete exit in 2007,
Hmm.
and got half of the formula right. So did a much better job at understanding how to maximize enterprise value on the exit, learn from round one. What I did not learn, though, is how to land on your feet emotionally in a next chapter, as opposed to it kind of feeling like the last chapter.
Hmm.
So spent a couple of years really flopping around emotionally, very stressed out, not happy, lots of anxiety, because I had lost purpose,
Yeah.
and I totally was not prepared for that.
Mm.
Um, so, fast forward to today, over the last 16 years, including my own personal experience doing about a dozen transactions, I've worked with a couple hundred plus business owners on exits. And what I've learned is that business owners need to be more focused on building enterprise value than building their business, and should not underestimate the change that they are going to go through when they no longer own the business. Because people say, well, what's important to you? How do you when you wake up each morning, go to bed, everybody says, my family, my
Yeah.
kids. And they're absolutely right. I'm sure it's important, but it's not where your thoughts are all the time. Your thoughts and your identity are wrapped in your business. And in the absence of that, there's a lot of publicly documented cases of very wealthy people just going off the emotional deep end because
Yeah.
they've lost their purpose.
That's right. I want to dive into both of those, but the first thing you said was fascinating to me, and maybe in the M&A world it's very clear. Can you define the difference between focusing on growing your business and enterprise value? So you kind of looked at those two things as separate, and tell me about that.
Yeah, so if you look at two companies side by side, and we've actually worked on deals like this where we've got two businesses in the same industry that have very similar at face value optics and kind of size and performance.
Hmm.
Um, so all dollars of revenue and all dollars of profit are not treated equal. Think about a company that has 100 million of revenue and $10 million in EBITDA that trades at a multiple of 12 versus a company that has $10 million of EBITDA, same revenue number, trades at a multiple of 6. in the same industry.
Mm-hmm.
So what's up with that? Why would one company that has the same revenue and EBITDA as another company trade for half the price? And the answer resides in the risk profile of the business and the value drivers of the business.
Okay.
So examples of risk profile would be, you've got customer concentration issues. That's kind of the most basic one. Do you have four clients generating all that EBITDA, or do you have 40 clients generating all of the EBITDA? A lot of risk there with
Got
four clients. Are you servicing sectors that are mature or maybe declining versus are you servicing sectors that are growing?
Mm-hmm.
What is your growth rate? Are you flat and comfortable, or are you growing each year? Buyers are buying a business for what it's going to do for them, not what it's done for you.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to demonstrate a growth rate is going to drive your multiple up. So, I could go on and on about examples of value drivers and risk profile components, but business owners just often get wrapped up in, hey, it's all about revenue and EBITDA. It's like, no, no, no. It's about the multiple
Got it.
that gets applied to that EBITDA and how you can influence that multiple. And most business owners kind of have blinders on. And then they
Mm-hmm.
find out after the fact when it's time to exit, oh, geez, maybe if I would have done more clients in this sector, if I would have gotten more recurring revenue rather than transaction revenue, maybe if I had built a stronger org chart, as opposed to it being all about me, I would capture more value.
Really interesting because as an entrepreneur you kind of just you chase whatever revenue will come in as long as it's good revenue, right? So
Yeah.
I have a question that I hadn't planned to ask, but it's really, I think, interesting for me to understand this. Do you believe in every business, and this is very generalized, should be built to sell, or let's leave it at that. Do you think they should be built to sell? Let me just leave it there.
Yeah, every business should be built to sell, and the reason is the desire or need to sell is often not well planned out in advance. If you look at the reasons people sell, it's because of retirement and fatigue. That's number one and number two reasons. Health issues come in there as kind of number three. And a lot of people think, well, I'm going to know years in advance of whether I'm getting fatigued or I want to retire. And what my experience has been, again, after seeing this a couple hundred times, is that is not the case.
Hmm.
Think about the turkey in the oven and you're watching it cook and the button hasn't popped. And you're like, that thing's still got another half hour in there. And then 5 minutes later, you turn around and you're like, crap, the button popped. Now you're scrambling to get all the other sides and everything ramped up so that it can all kind of land on the table nice and warm and ready to go. And planning for an exit is the same way. A lot of times you just wake up in the morning and you know what? I thought yesterday was just another bad day.
Yeah,
Yesterday was the straw.
yeah,
Yesterday was the straw that broke the camel's back.
got it.
And, if you think about that saying, the camel feels fine until that
Hmm.
last straw comes, and then it's just not fine anymore. So that's the way owning a business is the neediest kid you are ever going to have. And there's going to be a day when you're going to say enough is enough. And I can't
Got it.
take care of this needy child anymore, even though they're giving me love, they're giving me affection, they're taking now more than they're giving me. And you're going to want to exit that relationship.
Interesting. So I'd like to dive into the
So I
perspective.
just maybe put a bow around that.
Yeah,
That's why it always needs to be ready to sell because the desire to exit creeps up on you.
it's really interesting. I think it's like, yeah, I think it's like life, right? So the question that builds for me is thinking about, all right, so typically if you're running a business, you don't have a data room, you don't have, all the tough questions that you get in an M&A environment. You just don't have those, and you build it and you build the scar tissue and you get really good. Is it your belief that if, let's say for even our business, we're building up a business as strata, we don't have any of that stuff because we're not even close to thinking about selling. But if we started to build the business with that in mind, and then would it make us better business people?
If you build your business to sell,
Yeah.
yeah,
Actually thinking about the
absolute.
discipline to do that.
Yeah, because um people will ask me, well, what do I need to do to make my business, more valuable?
Yeah.
So, reduce customer concentration risk, make sure you're servicing growing sectors, make sure you have an org chart that the talent isn't all about you. Give
Yeah.
them kind of a checklist. And then what oftentimes a business owner will find is, well, geez, now that I've done all that, this is actually kind of fun. I'm
Got it.
making more money. I have less fatigue.
Yeah.
So my motivation to get out of this relationship, it's not as needy as it used to be. It's
Interesting.
giving more than it's taking. So I don't want to get out. So, the other side of having a business that is always sellable is if it's always sellable, you're probably a happier owner,
Mhm.
because it's taking less from you and giving more.
It's just a better, I mean, it's a better way to run a business at the end of the day.
Mhm.
It's the right way to run a business, although
Yeah,
it doesn't show up right away often.
right.
And you don't have the instant gratification, right? That's the
Now
problem.
I guess maybe a couple other things questions that would typically come up is, the asterisks here. Okay, well, does that mean a year before I sell, I should go in and put a new ERP system into the business? No. You don't want to do that. I'm not saying that's not a good decision for the business,
Yeah,
but that is a long-term investment. It's not going to make you more profitable in the near term. That's ultimately something that's on kind of the long-term to-do list.
got it.
But if there's something that is in the best interest of the business that isn't going to fundamentally, in the near term, financially strain the business or strain its resources, then it's something that should be done, whether you're going to sell or not.
Yeah, it's just striking me that it's part of the strategic plan that doesn't end up in the strategic plan in most businesses, right?
Yes, right.
That's really brilliant. That's why companies like yours help them think through this is your end state, what you're thinking about. So let's build it towards that, not all in one day, but let's build it
Hmm.
towards that. And then, the
Yeah,
turkey's ready, you're ready.
yeah.
I love that. So let's dive into, I guess I'll describe it as the human side of selling the business that you kind of alluded to. What do CEOs often misunderstood about the emotional side of selling a business?
Um, well, I guess there's two parts to that. There's the process itself, and the emotional part of the process is is the battle,
Hmm.
the negotiations, the due diligence, which feels very invasive, kind of the attitude that, they don't trust me. Why am I guilty until proven innocent? That can become a very emotional process in and of itself, uh, to just be being put underneath a microscope and forced to negotiate the value of your life's work.
Yeah.
Um, I had a discussion just yesterday with a business owner, um, and he's thinking about selling, and he asked the question slash made the statement of most business owners probably think their business is worth more than it actually is, isn't it? And I say you're absolutely right, and they assume that since they missed kids, sporting games, that their, relationship with their spouse had deteriorated, that they lost all their hair, that equates to enterprise value. And it really doesn't.
Hmm.
There's no correlation. So, making sure that, a business owner understands the true enterprise value when they go into the process and separates all the pain that's come from that during due diligence, during negotiation is just really important. So getting that emotional separation is hard. And then, as we touched on earlier, it's, the aftermath.
Hmm.
Um, it's the loss of identity, it's the loss of purpose, it's the depression that can kick in because you were just so wrapped up in your identity. And um, I was out having dinner by myself one night, and I was over here. I overheard two gentlemen talking at the table next to me, and it was literally on this topic. The guy had sold years prior, and he said he was miserable afterwards. He had nothing to do. He's tried to spend more time at home, and his wife was like, "Go away. This is not your space. This is my space. You need to go find something to do."
Oh,
He couldn't golf all day. That got old.
yeah.
So, he really struggled, and he ended up buying another business. So much for the whole idea of retiring. Oops. He really didn't want to retire. He just was done with what he was doing.
Yeah.
So he went out and he bought another business, and then he sold that. But then when he sold that, he learned how to be a painter.
Hmm.
He took up studying American history, and there was a couple other hobbies, that he picked up in there. And he says it was a game changer.
Wow.
I woke up energized to learn. I woke up with a lot more fulfillment for feeling like I had purpose and things were really challenging. And that changed the outcome for me.
That's interesting. Mark, I'd like to get inside the room a little bit. How many do you have? You're there, or your advisors are there with the client at times in front of the person buying, right? Would that be fair? That happens from time to time.
Hmm.
How is that Take me inside the emotion of that room. I'm curious about how the CEOs react, even with your advice. Like, tell me what happens inside that room from time to time when it doesn't go well. Let's think of that.
When it doesn't go well, um, so first of all, normally there's more than just the owner in the room.
Yeah.
There are other key team members. And one of the biggest issues that we have in those rooms is that the owner too often tries to hold the microphone,
Hmm.
where we've already conditioned the buyer to believe that the owner is not key to the ongoing success of this business.
Got it.
So one of the challenges that we deal with is getting them to shut up and coaching them ahead of time, saying, Bob, Mary, you cannot speak.
Got it.
You've, I mean, yes, you hold the title of CEO, chairman, whatever, principal. This is your president or this is your COO, whatever the roles are. Let them do their job. I know in management meetings, everything else, you're used to doing the talking. You've got to put that behind. So that's one of the biggest challenges is getting them to let the team shine. And that's what people are acquiring. They're not acquiring the business owner.
Got it.
And that's one of the things that people lose sight of is I must be really valuable as the owner.
Hmm.
You probably are. That's not necessarily a good thing because if you get hit by a bus, the value goes away. The other thing that smart buyers know is business owners are terrible employees.
They are. That's
There's
right.
a reason you own a business. It's because you're not employable.
Yeah.
So most business owners just don't play well with others after they're sold. There's exceptions, absolutely.
Hmm.
But I've seen most business owners pretty miserable working for others
Yeah.
after they've sold.
Tell
So
me,
letting the team shine is important.
that's really important. I want to come back to that, but I'm so curious about, we all hear about after enterprise value is established, the earnouts. Sometimes that CEOs have to work for 2 or 3 years to get their ultimate value back, but they're not employable. So tell
Yeah.
me about how that you balance that out when there is going to be some sort of transition where the CEO's going to be working in some capacity in the new enterprise. How do you handle that? Because they have to shine in some way, uh, in terms of the long term. So how do you balance that?
Um, it's just hard.
It's hard.
I mean, most business owners are kind of counting the days, if you will, until the earnout is paid and they can leave.
Yeah.
I have seen business owners essentially abandon the business.
Wow.
It's not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily negate the earnout, but the earnout is now, it's kind of like a kid that's no longer being babysat.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of things could happen to that child left unattended.
Yeah.
So, I wish I had a better answer for you, but it's really hard because there's a conflict there. The owner wants to receive the earnout, but the owner doesn't want to work for somebody else.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's times when it goes well when you've got a buyer that gets that
Yeah.
and will say, hey, you know what? You work your magic. We're going to be over here doing other stuff. We
Yeah.
trust you. You got this. And they'll just leave them be. And that's the smart way to do it. But buyers come in and start tinkering with things that the
Mm.
owner believes shouldn't necessarily be tinkered with, and it starts to kind of poke them and
Yeah.
get under their skin. So, leaving a seller alone is something, obviously there's reporting in place and everything else so that it's not left unattended. But, that's pretty important. The other thing, the whole idea of an earnout, business owners should sell with the mindset that they're not going to receive it.
Got it.
It's ice. I'm not saying that they're not going to, but that needs to be your mindset. It should be the icing on the cake. If you don't get the earnout, and that's going to fundamentally change, how you felt about the deal, your financial situation, then you need to come up with a new strategy because you're never going to be as stressed as you are during that period of time in your entire life, probably.
Yeah.
If you're holding your breath, waiting for that earnout to come, there's
Yeah.
just too much that can go wrong. And I'm not saying it's because, buyers are trying not to not pay it.
Yeah.
But stuff just happens and it doesn't get paid. And if it's going to turn your world upside down as a seller, then you probably shouldn't agree to it.
One of the things we hear about with M&A is the buyers, and I don't know if this statistically is true, but anecdotally true, they often F up the businesses that they buy.
Hmm.
Do you get some insight into that world and what advice would you have? Because there are people who sell their business that really want it to land in a good place because they've got this legacy employees they want to take care of. They don't want them, cut and dealt with poorly. So, do you work on both sides of the fence there to help make sure the integration is positive, or is it just at the transaction you're done?
Um, we don't do integration management or coaching, as a practice,
Mm-hmm.
but as you can imagine, after working on as many deals as we have, we've seen patterns
Got it.
of what works well and what doesn't work well post-transaction as far as how a buyer manages this new asset. And there's a few points that I can share that will probably add the most value to this topic. Number one, um, employees.
Mm-hmm.
So the employees of the seller fought to get their roles. They interviewed, they they pursued that job and they've gotten ingrained in this environment and this culture and these patterns. So they're very comfortable and they fought to get those jobs. Um, a hired employee has a certain mindset. An acquired employee has a very different mindset.
Mm-hmm.
An acquired employee wakes up and finds, I was sold.
That
I
sounds
didn't
bad.
interview for this job. I interviewed for the job I used to have. I don't know anything about this employer. I don't know anything about how they do things. And when you introduce uncertainty to an employee, you create stress and anxiety. When you create stress and anxiety, everything gets put underneath a microscope.
Yeah.
Their role, their life.
Yeah.
They're laying awake at night saying, what if there's somebody else in that company that does my job? And am I going to get fired? So now I start interviewing,
Yeah.
and and this could be the best move for them ultimately, but they don't know that. So
Yeah.
they assume the worst. So
Mm-hmm.
now you've just bought a company with a bunch of employees that are all stressed out because they were just sold to the highest bidder.
Yeah.
Also, customers, all your customers that you have, you fought for.
Yeah.
You made multiple presentations, bid, you built relationships, you got certainly months, if not years, invested in winning that customer. Your customer wakes up the next morning and says, well, I was just bought. These guys did nothing to earn my business. So I'm going to put them underneath the microscope.
Got it.
And you're guilty until proven innocent. Same thing with the employee. Employer, you're guilty until proven innocent. So
Mm.
now the buyer comes walking in thinking everybody loves them,
Yeah.
customers and employees alike. And the reality is it's the opposite of that. And buyers don't spend enough time training and teams and employees on how to manage that situation. They go to their VP of ops, their VP of sales, or VP of HR, or whatever, and say, you know what, we just bought this company, go in and do your magic.
Mm.
You got to work that magic totally differently because you didn't earn those customers and you
Yeah.
didn't earn those employees. You bought them all. So they're sitting there, their arms crossed, waiting for you to make a misstep.
Yeah.
So you can't treat them the same way as you're treating your employees that have, in the buyer's company, fought to get that job and that you've earned as a customer. So the biggest mistake is not treating bought customers and bought employees the right way and teaching teams how to handle those folks with kid gloves.
That's brilliant, Mark, because we all know that the objective of anybody buying a business is, to ultimately have either strategically the customers or the numbers to the bottom line, one or the other, right? Or sometimes both. But that assumption is really wrong unless you do the integration properly, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's basically an arranged marriage.
Yeah, yeah,
For those people, that's how it feels.
that's really interesting. I love that. Let's take a little bit of a turn. Let's talk a little bit about YPO, and specifically the Deal Network. You've had some major roles in YPO, and you were chairing the YPO Global Deal Business Network. What did you learn about being, first of all, in leadership in YPO, and then secondarily, you dealt with a lot of deal-focused CEOs. So tell me about the YPO experience, and then the CEOs underneath that. I mean, I don't know how many they're in now, but it's the largest network in YPO, if I'm not mistaken, right? Or
Yeah, you've
close to the largest.
got
Yeah,
just shy of 15,000 YPOers in the deal network.
yeah,
So it is the largest network. The highest percentage of members in a network are in the deal network. And I guess a couple things, putting the deal network aside, that I learned in YPO that have carried over to my personal life. Um, I've had just shy of 100 leadership roles in YPO. So if you go on my profile on my YPO and log in, you'll see the list that has built up over the last 24 years. And um, over all of those roles, one of the things that I've learned is there's nothing harder than leading a leader.
yeah.
So I mean, we're all enlisting as an officer, an event champion. We're enlisting other CEOs to do work for us for
Correct.
free.
We're free. That's correct.
So you're not going to tell them what to do. Remember, these are people we all agreed to just a few minutes ago are unemployable.
That's
So, so I'm not going to be able to tell them what to do. I'm not paying them anything. So how do I get people to do the stuff that needs to be done when you're in a leadership capacity in this organization? So I learned very early on the art of inspiring people to do things rather than requiring people to do things.
yeah.
In my own company, I could just look, I'm paying you, you're going to do your job.
Correct.
And what I learned in YPO, that doesn't work. But what I also learned is you don't have to run your business the same way.
Yeah.
Meaning, I hired you, I'm paying you, you've got to do this. You can apply that same practice within your organization, and it's way better to inspire people to do things rather than require people to do things. So that was the number one lesson that I learned from all those leadership and champion roles is the art of just inspiring people to do what needed to be done without whacking them on the knuckles with, some sort of, stick that you had
Love
to
it.
get stuff done.
Love it. So
I don't know if I
influence.
answered your question though.
No,
That
you,
was what
you
was
you
on my
did. You did. No, you
mind.
did because it is, as you know, we both shared lots of roles in YPO, and it's always influence over authority, and then reputation is the thing that permeates from that, right? And that's why, you and I have connected because we have a lot of commonality in the
Yeah.
work we've done in YPO. So then let's transition from the lesson there and how you've applied it to your business to what did you learn from dealing with 15,000, not all of them, but connected through all of them to the deal network. What kind of lessons were there?
Specifically in the deal network.
Yeah.
Um, well, specifically in the deal network, I learned that there was a lot of people that were like me when I exited from my first business.
Interesting.
There's a lot of people, and even the second one, there's a lot of people that are just kind of building and running the business, not thinking about enterprise value.
Got it.
You just kind of assume that because people are successful and they're in YPO, that they have the answers to the test,
Yeah.
and they just don't. After conducting countless workshops and seminars and group discussions all around deal making, um, you learn about people's blind spots, and you learn about their weaknesses and the holes in their resume, if you will. And I would say one of the biggest is understanding how to assess the value of the business, build the value of the business, and then exit the right way. And I mean, when you think about it, it's like, okay, how many times do you sell? I don't know. Once, maybe twice.
Twice.
So it makes complete sense that they don't understand this realm because they just haven't needed to. So what I try to preach to YPOers is you need to, even though you haven't done it and you've
Yeah.
got no immediate plans for it, the longer, the more runway you have in advance of takeoff of an exit, the better shape you're going to be in, the more satisfied you're going to be. So yeah, it's really just, YPOers are no different than non-YPOers, and that is they don't run the business with enterprise value in mind.
I love that. And so my closing question that ties to that, and you answered it partly, what should the CEO listening today do in the next 24 hours to begin preparing for either, I'll call it a better business, an easier business to run, but ultimately an exit? What are the things they should be starting to think about? Should they hire companies like you to say, hey, I don't know when, but I'd like to be ready? Like, do you ever have that as well happen to you where people say, I just want to be ready and I don't know when, as you suggested, the turkey's going to pop? Uh, so what's advice do you give to them in the next 24 to 48 hours that they should think about
Yeah.
or do?
So this is a little counterintuitive, and I could give you a lot of answers to that question. But the first one that comes to mind is one of the common discussions I have with business owners. And it's the business owner that says, I get an email a day, I get a call a
Mm,
day from somebody wanting to buy my business or from some broker offering to sell my business, blah, 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 blah. Delete spam.
got it.
And I'm like, stop that. All of those people are going to give you the answers to the test. All of those people are going to tell you what you need to do between now and the time when you want to exit to have the perfect exit,
Got it.
because they're all living in that world right now of deal making in
Hmm.
your space. So what I'm not suggesting you do is say, yep, I'm ready to sell. Do you want to sign an NDA? Let's have deep, meaningful, confidential discussions. Now, what you do is you take the call and you say, look, I'm not going to live forever. So there's going to be an exit at some point in time if my kids don't come into the business. So I want to start being a student of what it's going to take for me to have the best deal possible.
Gotcha.
That's the discussions I would be having with brokers. I would be asking them, well, tell me about the deals that are going down right now. I heard that XYZ company traded. Do you know anything about that? Oh yeah, well they traded on this date and they traded at this time and this is what their value was. Rumor has it, wow, that seems really high. Why did they get that value? Well, because they have this unique aspect of their business that is a value driver. And you're like, crap, quietly to yourself, I don't have that.
Yeah.
So you start making a list of all the things that you need to do in
Smart.
order to be that best company, that most valuable prize in your space. You also start building a list of who the active buyers are. Wow, so and so has been doing a lot of deals.
Yeah.
And remember when you sell, when you exit, you can have the most wonderful process in the world. You can have the best business, but if you don't have the right person on the other side of the table, you
Yeah.
can't capture any of that.
Yeah.
Just think about the phrase, it takes two to tango. You could be the best dancer in the world, but if your dance partner doesn't know what they're doing, it's not going to be a good dance.
Love it.
So we all say yes, or well, my banker should know what the buyer pool is. They should know how to build the banker pool. You know what? You need to be an advocate for yourself as well,
Hmm.
not just in healthcare, but in deal making.
Yeah.
So become a student of the buyers in your industry. Who's doing the deals? How are those deals doing? Call those business owners and say, hey, I heard your so does so and so. How is it going post acquisition?
Smart.
Oh, these guys, they treat me like a king.
Got it.
This is great. I thought I was going to be miserable working for these folks, but I'm actually happy working for these folks. So you're going to go into a process a lot more confident, a lot more informed, even if it's 5, 10 years from now, than you were if you didn't take any of those calls, didn't respond to any of those emails until like 90 days before you were ready.
I love it. I love it. You use the word, it's the test that, the test that you're going to be having, but you're getting to study. I love that. What a great
Yeah.
analogy. That's beautiful. Mark, before we wrap it up, is there any question that you wish I would have asked you that you would answer that we didn't talk about today?
Hmm. Um, Yeah, so I guess this is one of the few interviews I make it through where people don't ask me about fitness.
Well, I could see you're ripped,
And
buddy, so it's all good.
well, I say that because if people do digging, they'll find
Uh,
probably more about me on the web and competing in different sports than business. And and the question I get is, how do you find time to manage your health, to manage your training, given everything that you're doing, and why is it so important to me?
yeah,
And um, for me, your body, your mind, it's all tied together. And a chain is only as strong as its weakest link.
for sure.
And the body is just another chain, another link in the chain. And if it's weak, it's going to compromise your ability to perform in other areas of your life.
Yeah,
Um, so I guess the one message I would share as it relates to that is, yes, you need to work hard at building enterprise value and having a successful exit. Yes, you need to spend time with family and invest in those relationships with your kids, your spouse, everybody else, but don't ignore yourself.
yeah,
You and I are both in YPO. So a lot of meetings start with, tell me what's going on in your world, personal, family, business.
yeah.
So everybody can tell you what's going on family. Everybody can tell you what's going on business. Nobody can tell you anything that's going on personally because they put their business and their family before themselves. So don't underinvest in yourself personally. Don't underinvest in your physical health because I'm firmly convinced that's what allows me to succeed professionally. And as a parent, as a partner, as a son, as a friend, all that good stuff.
Well, what's interesting about that is you are at the center of everything, and if you're not at your best, how can you be at your best?
That's
You
right.
can't. You really can't. And so you need to have the energy for your family, you need to have the energy for your business, you need to have the energy for your life. And it starts with, not drinking too much, eating too much, and not working out. So I'm with you, brother. That's awesome advice. How can people reach you if they want to have more conversations?
Well, you can email me, mherbick at Pursuant.com, or you can certainly call me. But yeah, I'm on our website, Pursuant.com, and you can reach out to me there or connect with me on LinkedIn.
That'd be awesome. Dude, thank you so much for taking the time. We've learned a lot. Your perspectives are exactly what I was hoping for, and I had high expectations. So thanks so much for spending time with us today.
Thanks, Alan. It was a pleasure.